this evening's vintaging is going to involve taking out this fairly old Lucas key ignition. The battery lead disconnected there up on the earth, and I already worked out that when this is on the first click, sending power to the coil, that it gets hot and the power once the coil starts reducing over time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace it with this new key ignition switch. I am reluctant to do that because I do like to keep everything Lucas, but and old if possible. But years of power flowing through, it's probably just gunted up inside and that's it. It's a sealed unit. Probably can take it apart. I will take it apart at some point. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of dunce in it there, and that's keeping the Bakelite in. So I'll definitely try and take it apart and clean it up inside. That's probably all it's going to take. But for now I'm going to fit this because I'll be needing the tractor, so I'm going to take a picture of where all these are. They are all numbered anyway, but I'm just going to take a picture and we'll put everything back the way it's meant to be. So it's a beautiful evening here, so I'm looking forward to getting out, maybe bringing another load of fill for the shed extension. But as you probably saw if you're watching earlier videos, I had a wire coming straight from the battery to the coil, and I don't really like that. I might have to change 1 or 2 of these because I see some of these are that one's a wider one there, so I might go and cut that off and fit a wider male or female spade connector onto it, and we'll see what if we have to change any other ones. So it looks like maybe this one has to be changed as well, so we have to get 2. So I'll go and do that. I like to make sure just before I go putting that on that, you know, that I find out which connection is which. Now it is numbered 1, 2, 3 and 4, but still just something I like to do. So we find number 1. So this is just the continuity test, so that's what I want to hear when I put on my ignition. So that's 1 click, so that's power in, so this should be ignition, and then this should be when I actually turn the key, so I'll turn it. So there is another click in it as well, so 1 click, 2, but I don't need that. So this is wired exactly as I would expect, so I'm just going to get the old key ignition and bring it over here and do the same test on it. The old Lucas one, be interesting. There's a way of finding out whether this was the actual factory one. Wouldn't be surprised if it was. Lovely brass connections on it. An awful pity that it started to fail anyway. So do a little quick test on the probes. So that's number 1. Power in, so 1 click. So there should be power at number 2. Am I right? That's 1 there. 2, so power there, so we're on 1 click here. Strange enough, it goes 1 to 3 on this. That's interesting. That's very interesting. And now start. Okay, genie. 1, 3, 2. You'd imagine it'd be 1, 2, 3. So that's ignition on. That should go. So that should stay beeping when I turn the key. Am I right in saying that? There. Yeah. So it should stay on because you expect your ignition to stay on when you turn the key. So turn the key there. So it definitely is like there's a bad connection in there. Especially when you're turning the key. That should stay beeping. So there's no problem when you turn the key, the resistance is 0. So yeah, there's definitely a bad connection in there. And then turn on the ignition, start the engine, we'll say. The resistance is still a bit high there for my liking. Takes it a while for it to come down. It's not straight, it's not ideal enough. So look, that's good. We found the problem and we're going to sort the problem. So let's get back to the tractor now and get the new one fitted. So we need, for the starter switch, we need a wide female one. So these are the ones, the yellow bit, and I might cut the yellow bit off, and I've put on a bit of heat shrink instead. So this is a nice heavy wire. Might have to take a little bit more insulation off that wire, because I want this to be in here, plenty of actual copper wire to be in there. Then again, it is only for the starter switch, so it's not very important, but let's see, even if it's making it a little bit wider, just to help. So the only problem with these big wide female spade connectors is they are best for wide wires. Not all the wires they're used with are as wide. They need to be to fit through there nice and snugly rather than being too narrow. So sometimes I just like to make the wire just double it back over itself a little bit. So that's that there. Go to our yellow one of these. This isn't going to be seen, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but still I do like to try and do things right. Pull test on it, it's good and solid there. Give it another squeeze in a minute. Get the heat shrink up. That's okay, the heat shrink will go up on that. Sometimes when you squeeze these, the heat shrink doesn't like going on them. Now if this was for an ignition, would say going to the coil, what I would do is I would probably solder that, being honest. So now lighter here just to give a little shrink. It'll help protect it. Keep everything nice and still. So this switch is different, so this is 1, 2, 3 in that order, whereas the Lucas was 1, 3, 2, we'll say, as we worked out. So that is okay. So we've got 1 is power in, that's this. 2 is both of them white wires. 1 is going to the charge light and 1 is going to the coil. So I'm just looking at that. I'm happy enough with that. Yeah, that seems to be good enough. I might put a spot of solder on that actually, the more I think of it, just to be sure. So that's going to go on there. And that is too loose for my liking, so I'll get my pliers and give that a squeeze. It is only going to the starter switch, so it just doesn't need that much current going through it, but at the same time I want to keep all these connectors nice and snug, no nothing coming off, causing a firework display that we didn't order. So number 1 is power in. Why Lucas decided to go 1, 3, 2, I do not know on their keys. But anyway, this lad here is the coil, so I'm going to clean him up and I'm actually going to solder him. A bit of flux on to where we need solder, so I'll just help clean it. And then hit with a bit of solder. These are lovely brass spade connectors. doesn't have to be a thing of beauty, it just has to make a very good connection. That's all I'm looking for. Hot enough now. Wouldn't mind getting the wire, the solder up on the wire there. If it doesn't stick to it, it just needs a little bit more flux, I would say. At least that way I know it'll actually strengthen it as well. Don't like to see bare wire going into them. How are we looking now? So make sure that solder is connection there across those wires. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so that is that, and that goes on to position number 2 there. So we're powering our ignition light and we're powering our coil. This is power in and this is starter switch, blue and white. You can see that down there. Starter switch, by that I mean the switch that works off the, and this is in neutral. So that's that. I'm happy with all the connections on them, but they're good and solid. So what we can do now is we can put our key in, and hitch up our battery lead, and then we can take a measurement. So I'll put a cloth behind. We have a glove here, just in case I haven't decided I want to hit earth. No sparks when you put on the battery lead is always a good sign as well. So give that a quick nip. Okay, so do we have our ignition light? We do. We have our ignition light there, so that's on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to measure the power here. So I've all the sparklers out because I was doing a compression test on the engine. Got a lender one off my dad, so I'm happy with the results. So go and get the voltmeter now and see what sort of power we have at the coil. So let's check this and see. So I'm going to take the earth from the actual battery because it's going to be the best connection. 1174 would say, on this side here it should be small 0.4, so when you add them up you get what's in the battery there, roughly 12.1. So yeah, I'm happy enough with that. It's a lot higher than what was in it before. I think there was only 11, so that's good. So another little test we can do here is go back to the key here, and we're looking for number 2 connection there, and we've 1186 there. So there, so you see what we have here. Try and get a good connection in there. 12 point. Okay, so let me see now. 12 point, just literally 12 volts there. So what I might do is, since we've just 0.1 more of a volt in the battery, I just want to check that wire there, see what's going on, where that's coming from. I know where it's coming from, so I'm going to start checking connections. this to see if I can get a slightly better amount of power to that wire, because it all makes a difference to your spark. So we've 12.26 there. Not interesting. Across the battery again, what do we have? 12.24, 12.25. Yeah, okay, so when we connected it to the key and I checked it straight off the key there, the connection is only 12.1 or something, isn't it? Connection's good. So back onto one there. Making a good connection there. Earth off the battery. 12.25, yeah, so we do have good power getting to that. So once more we'll turn on the ignition and we'll just check what's happening again with the coil. Earth off the battery, first terminal there, 11.78. So okay, so what can we do here? Could we, for example, check and see, maybe this is normal. Look, we're just going to check it anyway. See what's happening at that terminal there. 11.92, 11.86, 11.9. So maybe it's the ignition light and the coil's dragging a little bit. Power. .98, so we're getting close to 12 there. That's good. And then down here, of course, the coil is going to draw current. 11.86. Things are improved from 11.74. I know we're talking small voltage here, but you know, it is all going to affect. It is all going to affect the spark at the end of the day. Like, you only have 12 volts, like. Through just doing a little bit of checking, cleaning the connections, you can get even 0.1 more, 0.2 more, especially when you're trying to burn kerosene. Might just make the little bit of difference to starting, to running, and to burning. So 1187 roughly there. Okay. 1205 in it there now. Strange, a minute ago I thought we had battery voltage. I suppose we have battery voltage when we turn off the key, don't we? Yeah. Give or take. 1.22 and our battery we've, so that's okay. When we turn on our ignition, let's check that first terminal again there, see if that affects it at all. It does. It takes 0.2 of a volt out of it roughly. Okay. 11.92. And with our coil again, 7.8. 7.9. Yeah, okay. That's definitely the best part of a volt better than it was with the old key ignition in. So what I'll do is I'll take off the battery lead again. We'll clean all the terminals on these because I consider that a bit of maintenance. And we'll actually go ahead now and just fit this and get it in place. And get it on. I don't think we're going to go seen a massive difference considering I did have a wire coming straight from the battery to the coil. It bypassed any dodgy, worn out key switch. And maybe one of the days I might pull open that Lucas old key ignition switch and we'll see what's actually happening in them. Okay, so let's get this roughly straight. Okay, that's fine. No point in turning with the key. Just as well, I'm not too fussy about the paintwork in this track. Okay. Yeah, you boy. Right. There's 2 clicks on this. I don't know why you'd want a second one. Well, it's a little bit, sort of moving a little bit off straight here, but it doesn't matter. We'll keep an eye on things and see how we go. And then when we're looking for something to do of a rainy afternoon, we can have a look. Actually, I might try and fit that brass one back on this after a while. Clean it up. It's nicer looking at brass and that stuff anyway. And or will I just do it now? See, does it fit? I don't really put brass in anything anymore. It's too expensive, I suppose. Mightn't actually fit because it could be imperial versus metric, but God loves a trier. So have a go. See, does it fit quickly? If it does, we'll do just that. I'm just going to go and find the washer and come back. So no, the brass one is not going to work. So what I'll do is I'll just tighten up the nut, the chem nut. Seems to be in around a 24. So it's just imperial versus metric threads. Now that'll do. And when we're at it, I'm just going to clean up the battery terms a little bit and make sure that's nice and clean in there to make sure the best connection is getting down to that coil. While I was at it, I was working out that the power going to the ignition switch is fed from this here on top of this, the solenoid, and that is fed by the positive lead from the battery. So I'm after polishing that up. Nice copper end there, both sides, and I'm after just putting a washer on that. I'm after polishing that up as well. So that green connector there goes down on top of that, and then our battery lead goes on top of that, and we have a washer on top of that again, a nice wide one. Make sure we have a good connection, and then have a nut here as well. So everything's been polished up, cleaned up, sanded, all of that. So I'm just going to redo that test then, see if we can prove the power going to the coil. So we were saying it was about 11.8 something there, so if we could get it up to 12. Now look, the coil is probably using a certain amount anyway. So these are just simple little jobs we can do. Cost actually upside down, is it? I guess they cost nothing, just a bit of time, and they might just help things, and if they do, the engine will run that a little bit better. Okay, 7/16 nuts. So give them a nice tighten up. I always prefer connections to be bolted if possible. Okay, so that's good and tight, not in the way of anything there. So put back on our battery lead, tighten them up. And it's way better, you're way better off taking connections off the likes of that than, you know, both connecting things to the battery lead itself. So we'll move this over the side here, we can see what's going on. View the voltmeter. I'm just going to check once again what's in the battery, see what we're starting with. And we might have an improvement into the power going to the coil, might not. If we don't, we're not going to go getting fussed about it. So 1227 in the battery, so turn our ignition on, one click, take our earth from the battery, and we'll put this over here. So we're still around 11.82. Okay. So let's check and see. 12.11 with the ignition on, with the ignition off. .22 and in the battery. We have that, so that's definitely battery voltage. There's no bad connection there. So what I should have done when I had the wire out from behind here was checked it for continuity. Obviously there is continuity in it, but just to see if there was a little bit of resistance in it. If there's a little bit of resistance in it, it could tell me that there's just a little bad connection there somewhere, but I can check it here. So we've 12.24. Yeah, so the battery voltage is definitely making it to, and that wire anyway, 12.25. Okay. So that's okay, at least we know there's no problem with that wire. So look, we have identified a problem, found a little problem with the ignition switch. The old one, they seemed to be getting kind of hot, and the longer it was running, the less power was going to the coil. So that's just resistance and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do now is put it all back together and see if she'll start and all that. I'm sure, to be honest, I don't think it's going to be any difference, but still, that was definitely an issue. Come on piece, and I'm just going to try it for a quick start. It could be a bit smoky because I was doing a wet impression test on it. Wet being oil. I put oil down the spark plug holes and did a test. So that could be a little bit smoky because of that. But I only put a small bit. Test is on. The ignition, when you click it onto the first position, it really does feel like it's making a connection, more so than before. It just didn't feel like the spring was working inside maybe or something. That definitely sounds good. At least the key, I think, doesn't look out of place. Some of the newer ones can look a little bit gimmicky. Gimmicky, I mean, some of them like that. I would really like to look at that now with plastic keys. Don't really care what's behind here, but the likes of that hanging out your dash, to me, just doesn't look right. I like the Lucas style keys. So yeah, it's definitely sounds good. So the wet compression test results. If the bores are bad in the tractor, and you put in oil and you do a wet compression test, and it brings up the compression a good bit, it's a sign that your rings are worn, your bores are worn. So it only brought it up 8 psi max. Some of them didn't even change at all. One of them changed. So the bores are good, but there is a knock on it when it's ticking over very low. And that's just from years of running that on TVO with thermostat not working, or turning it over to TVO too early. What that is, if you ask me, is the small ends. So the bearings going into the, from the connecting rod into the piston there. So the oil ends up getting a little bit watered, a little bit thinned out. If it's running too cold on TVO, some of it doesn't burn and it ends up going down into the, past the rings, waters the oil. And I let the oil out of this, it was like water. So things don't get lubricated, so things wear quicker. It's grand once you give it a bit of a rev, but when it's ticking over low, you hear that. So what the compression test is telling me is it is nearly worth just doing the big, small end bearings and maybe the big end bearings on it, and maybe the oil pump. The bores are good enough. So that is a job I'd like to do down the road, definitely. But once you give it any form of rev at all, it seems to be happy.